One slap. That's all it took for my perfectly constructed, hidden life to shatter. In a grand ballroom filled with 300 guests, with red wine bleeding into my cream-colored dress like a fresh wound, the truth of my marriage and the power I'd concealed for years was about to be exposed by the last person I ever expected. My cheek burned from the sharp sting of her palm, and red wine dripped from my dress onto the pristine marble floor. The sound of that slap still echoed in my ears, louder than the gasps that rippled through the crowd. My sister-in-law stood there in her $1,000 wedding gown, her face twisted with rage, an empty wine glass still clutched in her manicured fingers. "Can't you watch where you're going, you clumsy fool?" I had only wanted to give her a hug, a simple, loving gesture to congratulate her on her wedding day, but my heel had caught the delicate edge of her train. He stepped closer to his sister, his eyes cold as they met mine. "This is her special day, and you nearly destroyed her dress." The betrayal hit harder than the physical blow. 300 pairs of eyes stared at me, some with pity, others with judgment, most with uncomfortable silence. His jaw was set, his dark eyes blazing with an anger I'd never seen before. He moved toward the microphone with deliberate, measured steps that made the entire room hold its breath. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that vast ballroom. Whispers began like a gentle breeze, then grew into a storm of shocked murmurs. The waiters, who moments before had been standing against the walls like invisible servants, suddenly straightened, their eyes widened as they looked at me with new understanding. "Ma'am, please let us help you," one of them stammered, his hands shaking as he tried to dab the wine from my dress. He gripped the microphone tighter, his knuckles white with tension. "She's the woman who saved my career 5 years ago when no one else would take a chance on me." The confident, radiant bride from moments before now looked like she might faint. Fernando's expression shifted from smugness to dawning horror as the weight of his words sank in. And Travis continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I'm about to become her business partner in the biggest merger this industry has ever seen. My name is Ruth Sinclair, though most people in my personal life knew me simply as Ruth Matthews after I married Fernando 3 years ago. Caden Marketing wasn't just successful, it was legendary in business circles. But I had made a choice early in my career. I had more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but I drove a modest Honda and shopped at Target. I could have worn designer everything, but I chose simple, elegant pieces that didn't scream wealth. Fernando never questioned my choice to keep my work life private. In fact, he seemed to prefer it. How wrong I was. At first, I found his loyalty admirable. She would criticize me, and Fernando would either join in or stay silent. The engagement had been a whirlwind. They'd only been dating 8 months when he proposed, but Rebecca was over the moon, and Fernando was thrilled that his sister was marrying someone successful. Not romantic history, but professional. 5 years earlier, when he was a struggling architect with big dreams and no connections, he had pitched his ideas to Caden Marketing. Travis had never forgotten that. While the rest of the world knew Ruth Sinclair as a powerful CEO, Travis knew her as the woman who had believed in him when no one else would. Why was Ruth Sinclair introducing herself as just Ruth and letting Fernando talk down to her? Why was she sitting quietly while Rebecca made snide comments about her little marketing job? I had asked him privately to keep my identity secret. I wasn't ready for my two worlds to collide. I thought I could keep managing both lives, keeping the peace, making everyone happy. I thought maybe we were finally starting to connect. The Grandview Manor was the kind of venue that made you feel like you were in a fairy tale. Soaring ceilings, marble columns, and crystal chandeliers created an atmosphere of old-world elegance. Rebecca had spared no expense, though I suspected most of it was being paid for by Fernando, and indirectly by me, with our joint account. I should have known that Rebecca would find fault with it. His eyes held a warmth and respect that I rarely saw from my own husband anymore. "That color suits you perfectly." "Oh, yes. Ruth always looks so professional." The way she said professional made it sound like an insult. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Rebecca looked stunning in her designer gown, and Travis's face when he saw her walking down the aisle was genuinely touching. For a moment, I felt hopeful. The reception started smoothly. Fernando had barely spoken to me all day, except to point out things I could do to help. "Ruth, can you make sure the gift table is organized?" "Ruth, the photographer needs someone to gather the family for photos, but stay out of the way." Each request felt like a small cut, but I complied. It was Rebecca's day, after all. Rebecca has never been content to just blend into the background. She's always reached for more, always pushed herself to achieve greatness. That's something I really admire about her. The guests applauded, but I caught several of them glancing at me with uncomfortable expressions. Even strangers could sense the undercurrent of his words. After dinner, as the dancing began, I tried to shake off my hurt feelings. I circulated among the guests, making small talk, playing the role of the supportive sister-in-law. "You and Rebecca must be so close," one elderly guest commented. If only she knew how Rebecca really felt about me. They were laughing together, lost in their sibling bond, and I felt like an outsider looking in on someone else's family. "It's Rebecca's day," I replied automatically. "I'm happy to stay in the background." "Ruth, can I ask you something? Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. When was the last time someone had asked me that? When was the last time I had asked myself that? "Of course," I said, but the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. "Ruth, could you make sure the cake cutting is set up properly? The photographer wants to do it in 10 minutes. "Of course," I said, already moving toward the cake table. The cake cutting went smoothly, with Rebecca feeding Travis a bite while the photographer captured every moment. The guests applauded and cheered, and Rebecca basked in the attention. Then came the moment that changed everything. As Rebecca and Travis finished with the formal photos, she turned toward the crowd with a bright smile. Her eyes found mine across the room, and she beckoned me over. "Ruth, come here, sister-in-law." I was surprised by the invitation, but pleased that she wanted to include me. Maybe the wedding had put her in a generous mood. I made my way through the crowd, careful not to bump into any of the other guests. Rebecca was glowing with happiness, her cheeks flushed from champagne and excitement. "Come here and give me a proper hug." For a moment, I thought maybe all of the tension between us had been in my head. Maybe this was the fresh start I had hoped for. I leaned in to embrace her, my heart feeling lighter than it had all day. The sound of tearing fabric was soft, almost gentle. But in that moment, it might as well have been a gunshot. I immediately stepped back, my hands raised in apology. "Rebecca, please. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." "Rebecca, please let me." That's when her palm connected with my cheek. The slap resonated through the ballroom like a thunderclap. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. "How dare you?" Rebecca's voice carried to every corner of the room. She grabbed a glass of red wine from a nearby table and, before I could react, poured it down the front of my dress. The cold liquid soaked through the fabric, staining the cream color a dark crimson. "There," she said, her chest heaving with anger. "Now we both have ruined dresses." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, could sense the shock and discomfort radiating from the crowd. But it was Fernando's reaction that broke my heart. Instead of coming to my defense, instead of telling his sister that her reaction was completely inappropriate, he stepped closer to Rebecca with a look of concern. "This is Rebecca's wedding day. The least you could do is watch where you're going. You know how important this day is to her. How could you be so careless?" The betrayal tore me apart. He was treating me like I had deliberately tried to ruin the wedding. "Fernando," I whispered, but my voice was lost in the shocked murmurs that were beginning to ripple through the crowd. Rebecca leaned into her brother's protective embrace, playing the victim perfectly. "Don't worry about it, Fernando said, stroking her hair like she was a child. Ruth should have been more careful. She knows better. In front of all these people, he was making it clear that his loyalty lay with his sister, not with his wife. I stood there in my wine-stained dress, my cheek still burning from the slap, feeling smaller and more humiliated than I had ever felt in my life. That's when I heard the sharp click of dress shoes on marble. Travis was walking toward the microphone with purposeful strides, his face a mask of controlled fury. The wedding guests, still buzzing with shocked whispers about the scene they had just witnessed, began to quiet down as they sensed something significant was about to happen. She had no idea what was coming. I watched as recognition dawned on face after face throughout the crowd. Socialites who had heard whispers about the mysterious Ruth Sinclair. Suddenly they all realized who they were looking at. The whispers started like a gentle breeze. I can't believe it. But Travis wasn't finished. His next words would change everything. The entire ballroom held its breath, sensing that whatever came next would be monumental. The woman my wife just publicly humiliated is Ruth Sinclair. The Ruth Sinclair. I could see people pulling out their phones, frantically Googling my name, their faces lighting up with shock as they confirmed what Travis was telling them. Rebecca's bouquet trembled in her hands. Ruth Sinclair, Travis continued, built Caden Marketing from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. She's been featured on the cover of Forbes 3 times. She's been named one of the most influential women in business for 5 consecutive years. When every other marketing firm in the city turned me away, when every board member advised against it, Ruth saw potential in my work. Rebecca made a small, strangled sound. Even she could understand numbers that big. Rebecca wasn't just facing personal embarrassment, she had potentially cost her new husband millions of dollars with her tantrum. He looked down at his bride, his expression a mixture of disappointment and disgust. You humiliated a woman who has more class and dignity in her little finger than you've shown in your entire life. Rebecca's knees buckled slightly. And Fernando, Travis's attention turned to my husband. You just publicly humiliated your own wife. The woman you promised to love and protect. The woman who, I'm guessing, has been supporting you financially without you even realizing it. Fernando's face went white as the pieces clicked into place. My modest lifestyle, my reluctance to discuss work, my ability to pay for things without ever seeming stressed about money. Suddenly, it all made sense. Travis looked back at the crowd, his voice rising to address all 300 guests. You've all just witnessed something extraordinary. You've seen a woman of incredible power and influence choose to live humbly, choose to put family first, choose love over status. And you've seen that kindness repaid with cruelty. Ma'am, please let us help you, one of them stammered, his voice shaking with nervous respect. But I barely noticed their ministrations. My eyes were locked on Rebecca's face as the full weight of her actions sank in. I didn't know. I never meant. You never meant what? He asked, his voice cold. You never meant to show your true character in front of 300 witnesses. You never meant to reveal that all your talk about being kind and loving was just an act. Fernando finally found his voice, though it came out as a strangled croak. I looked at my husband, really looked at him for what felt like the first time in months. I saw the man I had fallen in love with, but I also saw the man who had just chosen his sister over me in the most public and humiliating way possible. Would it have mattered? I asked quietly, my voice somehow carrying in the silent room. Would you have treated me differently if you had known, or would you have just found new ways to make me feel small? He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. We both knew the answer. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as he approached, everyone stepping back to give us space. I touched my cheek where Rebecca's hand had connected. It was still tender, still burning with the memory of that slap. But as I looked around the room at the faces staring back at me, some shocked, some embarrassed, some filled with newfound respect, I realized something. I was more than all right. 300 guests waited to see what I would do next. But I felt calm. I straightened my shoulders and stepped forward, gently brushing away the hands of the waiters who were still trying to clean my dress. The wine stain didn't matter anymore. He nodded immediately and stepped aside. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady and clear. A few scattered gasps broke the silence, though most people were still processing what they had learned. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate Rebecca and Travis's wedding. I chose to keep my professional life separate from my personal life because I believe that love and family should be about more than money or status." My voice remained calm, but I could feel the emotion building beneath the surface. I have listened to criticism about my lack of ambition from people who had no idea what I had built. Fernando's face crumpled. "You didn't know that humiliating someone publicly is wrong. And when the moment came to choose, you chose cruelty over kindness." I turned back to address the entire room. "I want everyone here to understand something. Power and success don't give anyone the right to be cruel, but they also don't require anyone to accept cruelty." My voice grew stronger with each word. "For 3 years, I have been told I should be grateful for love that required me to diminish myself. I have been told that speaking up for myself was selfish." I looked directly at Rebecca, who was now openly crying. "You have demanded that your brother choose between supporting you and respecting his wife. And tonight, you finally got your answer." The tears were streaming down her face now, leaving tracks in her carefully applied makeup. "But your greatest mistake wasn't slapping me. It wasn't even pouring wine on my dress. Your greatest mistake was doing it in front of Travis, a man who knows my true worth." I turned to Travis, who was watching me with something that looked like pride. "Thank you for seeing my value when my own husband couldn't. Because," I continued, "I don't make business decisions based on personal emotions." I looked back at Rebecca and Fernando. "What happened here tonight won't affect Travis's career or his success. But what happens to your marriage from this point forward will depend on whether you can learn from this moment. I hope someday you understand what you lost tonight." I gestured around the room at the shocked faces and uncomfortable silence. I started to walk toward the exit, but Fernando's voice stopped me. "Don't do this. I love you." I turned back to face him, and for a moment, my calm mask slipped. He could see the pain in my eyes, the years of accumulated hurt that had led to this moment. "This was 3 years of you choosing everyone else's feelings over mine." He took a step toward me, his hand outstretched. "Ruth, please don't do this. Forgive me for being stupid. I do love you." "No," I said, my voice firm. "You loved having a wife who wouldn't challenge you, who wouldn't outshine you, who would make you feel important and needed." I looked around the room one more time at all the faces staring back at me. The crowd parted before me like I was a queen leaving court. "Travis, please," she was saying, her voice high and desperate. "You never would have what?" Travis's voice was cold. "But I love you," Rebecca cried. "Ruth, wait. Please, we can work this out. I'll do better, I promise." As I reached the ballroom doors, I heard quick footsteps behind me. I turned to see Travis jogging to catch up, his tie loosened, his face flushed. "You weren't responsible for defending me, Travis. That was Fernando's job." "Maybe not," he said, "but I knew who you were. And I stood by while someone treated you like you were nothing." "Ruth," she called out, her voice cracking. "Stop," I said quietly. "Don't apologize because you found out I have money and power. Apologize because you treated another human being cruelly. Rebecca, if I had been exactly who you thought I was, Fernando's quiet wife with a small marketing job, would what you did tonight have been acceptable?" She stammered, "No, but my bank account doesn't change the morality of your actions." "Ruth, please don't leave like this. We can fix this." "You love the version of me that you created in your head," I replied. "Ruth, no. Please. Some mistakes reveal truths that can't be undone, I said gently. For the first time all evening, I smiled. I walked out of the Grandview Manor into the cool night air, feeling lighter than I had in years. As I drove through the quiet streets, my phone buzzed constantly. For 3 years, I had accepted disrespect because I thought it was the price of belonging to a family. Tonight, I remembered who I really was. A message from Travis, sent at 3 a.m., stood out. Ruth, watching you stand up for yourself tonight was one of the most inspiring things I've ever witnessed. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. Tell him that Ruth Sinclair doesn't have a husband. If he wants to speak with me, he can make an appointment through proper channels. That was the night Ruth Sinclair stopped hiding and started living. In the years that followed, Caden Marketing soared to new heights, our partnership with Travis a legendary success story. I saw Rebecca occasionally at charity events. The haughty princess was gone, replaced by a quieter, more thoughtful woman who always met my gaze with a respectful nod. I had finally, truly, begun to live it on my own terms, unhidden and unapologetic. Thank you for joining us for this epic story of revenge and self-discovery. You won't want to miss the next tale we have in store.